All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining. My name is Michelle Park. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist, and I am the host of Re-Envision Life Talks, where I bring on and invite everyday folks to come and share their stories in how and what they did to take that step of courage to live a re-envisioned life and then to give you hope. And so I'm really excited today with to have our guests. They are Dr. Anna and her husband, John. I'm going to read to you a little bit about their biography, just very short. But I want to let you know that Re-Envision Life Talks is something that I just began. It's offered once a month, the third Sunday of every month at 4 p.m. I know this is in competition, especially right now in the fall with football season. I was talking with my husband and he was like, yep, games are on. And I said, okay, well, I'm still going to go with it because this is what I've scheduled. So anyhow, those of you who aren't able to join us live, of course, I've said this many times. I hope you'll be able to catch this on the replay, especially for today, where we are talking about pregnancy struggles and infertility. And for those, there are several couples that I work with who come in to see me because they are struggling with beginning their families. And so some of the conversations around the challenges of starting a family are some things that we'll talk about today with Dr. Anna and John. But before I bring them on, I want to read to you a little bit of their biography. So Dr. Anna and John have been married for 13 years and are twin parents to 9-year-olds. So there's hope here in their story. When they first got married, they wanted children right away. For some, getting pregnant is easy, but for others like them, it was not easy. By the power of God and fertility doctors, they were able to conceive twins and become parents. Facing 3 years of living as a childless couple and fighting to have a baby created unique challenges in their marriage and made them a stronger couple. As a mental health counselor who suffered in silence during her infertility journey, Dr. Anna now commits her life's work to helping and supporting others experiencing similar family building challenges. John, a food scientist, and I want to hear more about this, John, avid train lover and woodworker, supports his family and enjoys being a twin dad. So please welcome John and Dr. Anna to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for agreeing to come on and share your story. I love that you are here. Before we go on, John, you are the first food scientist I've
Oh,
ever met. So can you tell me and those who watch a little bit?
well, yeah, I work for a major food company. I basically spend a lot of time in manufacturing plants,
Mm.
starting up products, and basically work on formulation and commercialization and all the equipment that's needed and the processes to actually make the products.
Oh, wow. That sounds interesting and difficult and complicated.
Yep,
And
yep.
oh
And it
my
was kind
goodness.
of that how I met Anna, believe it or not, because she was living in Chicago and we met each other online. And I was traveling to Chicago quite a bit during that time period. And that's where we ended up meeting each other 15 years ago.
Oh my goodness. So are you from New Jersey, New
Yes, I
York?
am. Yep.
Mhm.
You are. Oh, that's so cool. Well, and Dr. Anna and I, we've met at Nyack College, which is now known as Alliance University, and of course through our colleague Dr. Illy. So, hey, Illy, if you catch this, um, but yeah, tell us a little bit more about your love story, how you got together, and what ultimately made
Well,
you fall in love.
we met each other online, which I guess is more common now than it was back then.
Yeah.
And Anna told me that she was a child mental health therapist at the time that she was. And I had texted her back. I said, that must be hard. And that was like the first instinct I had when she said what her profession was compared to what I do, working with food and whatnot.
Mm.
So my gut instinct was, oh, that sounds a little bit hard, challenging and whatnot. And for some reason that resonated with her a little bit more than I really expected.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so we were talking and we arranged for a date and we had a date. And about halfway through the date was a little bit weird because she told me that she was actually supposed to get married that day. She had broken off an engagement about 3 months prior to that.
Oh, wow.
So it was a little bit uncomfortable. And after that, I was a little I was like surprised. The first thing I said to her was, "Well, I'm honored that you decided to go out with me on the day that you decided to get married." But to make a long story short, we wound up getting married 2 years to 2 days to that date.
No way. Oh my
Yep.
goodness. That's
Yep.
amazing.
Yep.
Well,
And
I already had my dress.
yeah, she already had her dress.
I had to use it.
Yeah, and I didn't care. He never saw it anyway. So it actually, put things in motion a little bit faster because we were prepared. She already had the deposit at the photographer in Chicago.
Yeah.
But I guess what happened over that 2-year period was about almost a year later, Anna decided to make a big leap and she moved to New Jersey.
Wow.
And
that is a big leap.
We were older at the time too. I mean, I was 20.
Yeah. Well, you were 26. 26. I was robbing the cradle. I was 38. So we're 12 years apart. So yeah, I was clearly robbing the cradle at that point. But
we both were at a stage in life where
we knew what we wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
We both wanted the same thing, which was to get married, have children. So I wasn't wasting time. I had my dress. I had the photographer booked, right? And so he kind of just fell into the groom seat, I guess.
Yep.
That's amazing.
We got engaged in February of 2009, and then we got married in September of 2009. So we really acted quick with the marriage, and Anna really, she's a planner, and she, had her big binder, and she put everything to work, and boom. And but our goal really was, we wanted to start a family as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of got a little bit interesting, after we were married for a year and still hadn't
got
pregnant yet. Yeah. And that's where things started to get a little bit harder, I would have to say.
Yeah, because most people, of course, they fall in love and they think about having families. Some people want families right away, and others will wait a bit. But when the time comes, whenever that'll be, whether right away or later, you don't really think about any challenges that one might come about.
Yeah, and I think I was a little bit more. I don't know if I should say patient with it, or I wasn't as anxious about it. I was like, oh, it shall come, it shall happen.
Which was, I think, our first point of conflict.
Yeah, and that definitely was.
Because I was not patient.
Yeah.
I was already 27 at that point, right? 28.
20, yeah, you were going 28.
To 28. And
well, you were 28 when, let's see.
When I got
pregnant. You were 28 when we got married. We were 28.
Oh, okay. 28.
We made each other 26. Yeah. So you were like 29. And then when you hit 30, I think that's when
that's when a lot of women begin to feel a little more, the clock is ticking in some ways biologically, and they feel the pressure.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
And, so, I mean, two aspects come up, right? But the first was our first point of conflict, which was I was a lot more ready to seek help from doctors earlier than John was. So I think there was that tension there because I was struggling, right? Month after month when we were not pregnant.
Yeah.
And then your comment would be, oh,
no, just wait, no,
which is not helpful when a woman's struggling and in emotional pain.
Yeah.
So that would make me more angry every month. And then I'm here because I guess eventually my doctor told me about fertility treatment at some point.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know.
And you had gone to a couple different
right. We tried
different places and different methods,
treatments. Yeah.
And tracking when she was when she was ovulating and stuff like that. And then I think the big thing was when we had gone to the one doctor and then the doctor was kind of rude to you and we left.
Yeah.
And then we found the other doctor.
Right.
So
and I think that was really the whole turning point.
Right.
Wow.
And I was getting more on board with IVF, but I kind of felt that was, I didn't feel it was natural. I guess there was some stigmas there that I had towards it, which I had to get over.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like something I was like talking to people about. And I kind of was silent on it. And then after, like later, then I found out, oh my goodness, this is a lot more common than I
Yeah.
originally thought it was.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious for both of you, right? What is your ethnic background? Because I think sometimes depending on your ethnicity or again, your family also, and we all have different, backgrounds, cultures, and all of that, right? You talked about stigma, John, which is why I was like, oh, let me like check in with this because there are those who will hear this and listen to this and feel like, connect with what you're saying here. And so, uh, as that happens, there is the stigma of either going for help, looking for, doctors, or even talking to someone about that. So can you tell me about, each of your family backgrounds?
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, Michelle, because that was kind of that second aspect when you said pressure. I
Mm,
know I definitely, being Puerto Rican, being Latina, and it even goes back to, I remember at our Roman Catholic wedding in the
mm,
church, I gave a bouquet of flowers to the Virgin Mary. And
mm,
that, right, was symbolic of like fertility and
mm,
our future family together. And so there was an element of being angry that
mhm,
I had a Catholic church wedding. I did all the right steps, right? Like
mhm,
the good Catholic girl got married first and wants children. And I gave a bouquet of flowers to the Virgin Mary, and our
yeah,
prayers were not being answered.
Mhm.
mm,
So there's a lot of anger towards
Mhm.
God
yeah,
for a long time there. And then seeing family, right? I mean, I'm very accomplished. I
Yeah.
got a
yeah,
PhD. I have a small business. I
mhm,
moved to a different state, and all of that really held no significance for my family. It was only about when are we going to have grandchildren for them?
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah.
So for me, it was a lot of pressure
yeah,
being a Latina to
Yeah.
provide my parents' grandchildren, because they had no grandchildren at this
yeah,
point. They
Yeah.
still don't have any other grandchildren.
mhm,
And being a good wife, right? A good wife
right,
should be able to
Yeah.
give her husband
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. And it's funny, I felt it from your parents too, because I
Yeah.
remember when I wished my father-in-law happy Father's Day, he used to say to me, oh, I hope next year I can say the same to you. So, so I was even hearing it from her family
Right.
too, as well. So,
Yeah.
so yeah. And I didn't have as much pressure on my side of the family.
Yeah.
Because my brother and my sister, who are actually both younger than me, they already had 2 kids of their own. So
Mm,
my parents already had 4 grandchildren. My parents they were so happy finally got married. I didn't get married till I was 40. So,
yeah,
so there
mm,
wasn't as much pressure coming from my
mm,
family as from Anna's, I think.
Right. And you're
yeah,
also from a white American background,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think is different cultural
Yeah.
values there too.
Yeah. But, I think my parents wanted me to have children, of course.
sure.
But I can't say that I felt the pressure nearly as much as Anna did, though.
Right.
And maybe that might have been the reason I was a little bit more passive on trying
Mhm.
to seek help and stuff
Mm,
too, as well.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. I mean, for you, Anna, going back to what you were saying in terms of, I guess you're trying at when, not that I expect you to remember, that far back, but I think at what point did for you decide I want to go and check in with the doctor?
Yeah, you may remember better than me. I mean, I know technically it's someone is defined with infertility after 1 year of trying,
Mhm, mhm,
at least under 35. That
mhm,
changes as the age gets older,
Mhm.
the time changes. So for us being under 35, it was a year. So I guess probably, my annual exam with the OBGYN,
mhm,
it being a year
Mhm.
had passed. I guess she probably then referred me to the fertility doctor.
mm,
And then I
okay.
just followed her advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, this is something that sometimes people ask with infertility. Is that something that happens with age? Is it in the family? Is
Mhm.
there anything genetic about that?
So we know with age it increases over
Mhm,
time because that's just natural. When a baby is born and they're female, they're born with a finite amount of eggs. So
Mhm.
that over time is going to decrease your
Mhm.
quantity of eggs. So that's why there is such a thing as a biological clock for women.
Yeah.
Because yes, once you start hitting 40, your egg quality and quantity decreases dramatically. So your chances for getting pregnant naturally decrease just over time
Yeah.
with age. Genetically, I haven't come across that. I think more so we're seeing more environmental impacts,
Mhm.
what we're eating, the climate, just like with cancer
Mhm.
has gone
Yeah.
up because of carcinogens in our
Mhm.
environment.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
it's the same with our reproductive system. There's research showing it's affecting sperm quality. So
Mhm.
fertility in men is dropping as
Mhm.
well over
Yeah.
time or lately because of environmental factors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that's more so than genetic. I haven't come across
Makes sense.
genetic factors.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard of those two factors as well.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
yeah. So through this, let's go back to your marriage and, talk about the challenges there. I'm hearing a little bit where, John, you might be a little bit more laid back about this. Anna is feeling a little bit more like, hey, like I need to check this out, and feeling the pressure more, whether culturally or because there's just, again, as the female body. And I'm hearing that there's that tension, the marital tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, I guess not feeling it in my body and not knowing, because like Anna would be like, oh, she would have hope that this was going to be the month that she would
Mm,
realize she was pregnant, and then she would lose hope, and I
mm,
would try to still encourage her and whatnot. But I think the thing is that, you know, intimacy started becoming a chore, I could say. And that's probably
yeah.
one of the big problems. It was no longer,
Mhm.
it was like, oh, we have to do this now, because if we don't, we're going to miss the opportunity for the,
Mm,
and that does, have an impact on the marriage,
sure. Yeah.
because it's not like you can do things spontaneously, or you're
Yeah.
kind of scheduled in and you have to do it, or else we're
Yeah.
going to miss it. We're going to have to
Yeah.
wait another month.
And so what actually was something that starts out like a time of connection and
Yeah.
intimacy for couples, that chore piece is something that I also often hear from
Yeah.
couples as well. And it's like, it's not fun anymore. The
Yeah.
intimacy is actually taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds
Yeah.
like it's something
And
that,
even when I had to travel for work, sometimes she would get upset. She'd be like, "Oh, it just causes so much
Mm,
stress, trying to like schedule things, and I'm trying to plan everything around Anna's calendar too as well."
right.
Um,
And what
and
was
then
that like?
it was a bit, because it was something I couldn't like exactly tell people. Oh yeah, I can't travel that day because my wife is going to be at the height of ovulation, and that's her chance to to make things happen this month. And
Yeah, I think for me, it was like, of course, when you're going through such a struggle, you
yeah,
want to blame
yeah,
something or somebody,
yeah.
right? And for me,
Yeah.
it was unexplained infertility until later they find out it was endometriosis. And also he has type 1 diabetes, which
Mm,
impacted some of the sperm
Yeah.
quantity, I would say,
mm,
more so than quality. But
mhm,
and before we knew any of that, it was me, I think, blaming you more, I
Yeah.
think.
mm.
Yeah.
I would say Diet Coke was why you're
Yep.
not, like I would just grasp for anything,
Yeah.
right? That seemed like he could change or do differently. And
Mhm.
so
Mm,
I
then,
remember there was some vitamins you wanted me to take
yeah,
too as well, like extra vitamins and this and that. And
yeah,
I'm pretty well, I've always been very well in control since I've had type 1 diabetes. You have basically, with type 1, you have no choice.
mm.
You either have complete control, or else it will really get out of hand for you. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think
um,
when, like, with struggling to get pregnant, we were so out of control
yeah,
with it that
yeah,
we try to find things we can't control.
yeah, yeah,
And that was me
Mm,
either blaming him or making him take vitamins or,
yeah,
mm,
I don't know if I ever yet, I don't know if see, I also, the way I cope with hard situations is I
mhm,
really kind of go emotionally numb.
mm,
And I
Mhm.
compartmentalized that. I put
Mhm.
it aside. So I don't remember if during that whole thing I felt like my body was not working or defective, but I mean, I must have,
Yeah.
right? I must have at
Right.
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
level felt like, what's wrong with me?
Mm.
What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. There's so much there. I imagine also in terms of grief, right? And
Yeah.
grieving. I mean,
Mhm.
and maybe, you already answered this question,
Mhm.
when, how did you both, when you were really coming to that place and understanding, okay, we have infertility, right? We're really struggling here. How did you grieve?
I say infertility never ends. And I don't mean,
Mm.
I say that as the realist in me
Mhm.
because even now, like we have our twins and they're almost 10, but I see pregnant women and I still wish that I could get pregnant naturally.
Mm.
Mhm.
Right. So I
Mm.
do still go through that waves of grief where
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
times when I do feel, yeah, like I do wish I could get
Yeah.
pregnant naturally and be pregnant again.
Yeah.
And because having a twin pregnancy was high risk as well. So
Yes.
Yeah.
I was emotionally
Yeah.
numb. Plus,
Mm.
I was high risk. I
Yeah.
was on bed rest. So
Yeah.
the pregnancy was quite
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Yeah.
survival
Anna did
mode.
not. It was
Uh,
she didn't have any time to enjoy her
no,
pregnancy.
exactly.
Uh,
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. And so there is that
Yeah.
grieving of that too. Like,
Mhm.
first, I grieve that we could not have that magical moment of like
mm.
making love and then we surprisingly get pregnant,
Mhm.
right? And I announce it and we
Yeah.
take a pregnancy
Yeah.
test and none of that was in our
Yeah.
story. And
Yeah.
so there's a grief of that of like,
Yeah.
wow, like we had to go to a doctor.
Yeah.
I call it the doctor in our bedroom.
Yeah.
Because it was, right? Like
Yeah.
they
Right.
Yeah.
I was constantly being monitored and probed, and then you have injections and medications,
Yeah.
and he has to provide sperm at home in a cup and bring it to the
Yeah.
doctor. So all that really is something I still grieve, that
Yeah.
even though we
Mhm.
have wonderful, beautiful
Yeah.
children, it's just that magic
Mm.
of
Mm.
of it happening naturally was
Yeah.
taken from us.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And then the
Yeah.
one doctor, I think where the turning point for me really was when the one doctor was he wasn't very nice to you.
He was dismissive of
Yeah, he was dismissive of Anna, and we
Uh,
left, and she
his
was
time.
upset, and that's when
yeah.
it really hit me that whatever it takes to get pregnant, we got to
Mm.
try. And I think that's kind of where in my own head I completely then realized that IVF was what we were going to have to try with the next doctor,
Mhm.
because
Mm.
this was just not worth it. It was just a
Yeah.
torture session, because what was it? The other one we were going to try was like the artificial insemination
Mhm.
that he wanted to try.
Mhm.
And then he basically said, well,
It probably wouldn't
it
have
probably wouldn't
worked.
work anyway,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it was
Oh,
so condescending. And,
I know.
this was a couple days, it was
wow.
right in between Christmas and New Year's. It was awful, this
Yeah.
disappointment.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that is awful. And I'm sorry that you had a doctor to say that when you I'm like right now, like I don't even know what to say to that,
Mhm.
because I'm like, what? That is just
Yeah.
unbelievable. When you're
Yeah.
But
already going through something and you're in pain, and to have someone just be very cavalier and dismissive and just so almost condescending about it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That doesn't give
yeah.
much hope.
Yeah. The only blessing was it woke me up though. That was when I really woke up. So as
Anna's
horrible as
like,
that
thank
was for
God.
Anna and how bad it was, it
Yeah.
woke me up, because that's when
Wow.
I was just like, I kind of just got angry.
Yeah, right.
And I realized that I had to completely,
Yeah,
I couldn't be halfway there. I had to
Right.
be fully there with Anna at that point.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, as you change doctors,
Mhm.
and it sounds like now, John, you're really fully on board, and Anna, I imagine that was a relief to you.
Mhm.
Tell me
Yeah.
about what that was like.
Well, I think when
Or,
we went to the
uh-huh.
next doctor,
Yeah.
we sat down and we had a good consultation.
Well, first I want to share
Yeah.
too the one who was not sensitive to my
Yeah.
emotional needs
Mhm.
was a male doctor, And from that, I'm in the field of fertility, so I know patients who see all these doctors I work with. And he's a numbers guy. Like, he was just strictly statistically speaking, it probably wasn't going to happen, was what he meant, right? But emotionally sounded different. And so then you ended up finding our doctor through a friend
of mine. Yeah.
And she was a female. So I bring up the gender difference because for us, that made a difference. And for me, to work with a woman doctor who, she was personable. Like, she called me herself with test results, and like, we had consultations. I had conversations with her, and that's something I didn't have with the other doctor. So to me, it was really the relationship with that doctor. I mean, I remember seeing her at ShopRite once and saying hi, you know, and the supermarket and saying hi. And we're still friends now and colleagues. So she's really a wonderful part of our lives. And so I share that because I know there are couples struggling, and the couples I have worked with as well do have this point in time when they're feeling like, I don't feel emotionally connected with my doctor, or my doctor doesn't talk to me. And really, we want comfort.
Was it bedside
manner, right? And so I firmly believe like that relationship is vital to the success of at least making the journey less painful. You know.
But I remember we had that good consultation where we sat down with her and we had the meeting and whatnot, and we hadn't done that with prior doctors.
Right.
It's the relationship that always makes the difference, right? And so I think that definitely, I imagine with, again, in the challenges of getting pregnant, to have someone who is going to come alongside and be empathetic. And even in the field that you and I are in, Anna, like, that relationship is really, we can have all the techniques and all the different things, you know, and theories to work from. But when that relationship is not really there, and that connection, that empathy, that the sense of, wow, like, I hear you, and I want to know how I can come alongside, even while offering, again, whatever specialties and ways of healing from this are being offered, right? That relationship is huge.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember her, she did get pregnant during our journey, but I remember her with the white coat keeping it hidden. Right. She was very intentional. Yeah. She was very mindful that I can't expose, you know, my belly to women I'm trying to get pregnant, because that's a trigger.
Oh, yeah.
She was really, and I remember that because, like you said, Michelle, we're therapists, right? So we watch that body language, and also any of those listening who are trying to get pregnant, we could see a pregnant woman like miles away. You can't hide that belly from us. Because we're still tunnel vision. That's all we see. Pregnant. So, I mean, of course, I'm going to see it too. But as a therapist, I was appreciative of her being private, you know, like just keeping it not obvious, so it wouldn't trigger me.
It's funny you say that, because I can remember now we'd be walking around at a store or something, and you get all upset because she'd see somebody walk by that was pregnant. And of course, me as a guy, I didn't even notice, you know. She'd be like, "Oh, do you see?" And she'd get all upset about it. And but you know, a lot of times guys don't notice that. At least I don't.
Well, tell me, then, like, I think as you're meeting with this new doctor, now there's a whole other process, you know, you're being presented with different options. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, you know, so usually the process is, because if you have medical health insurance that covers these treatments, they start with the least invasive, which is intrauterine insemination. So they take your partner's sperm or donor sperm, if that's what you need to use, and use basically like a turkey baster and just insert it into you. And they do that sometimes under medication. So I did start with hormonal medications to boost my egg production.
Mm-hmm.
So when they inseminated me with your sperm, I would have higher chance of getting pregnant. So usually that's the protocol because of insurance as well, right? Insurance will say, we'll pay for that first before you do IVF. So we had already done that.
Yeah.
So by
With the
time,
previous doctors, yeah.
right. So by the time we ended up with the new doctor, we moved into IVF, which is usually the next level of treatment. So I guess, like you said, we were ready to do what was necessary.
Yeah.
And, you know, they gave us educational sessions on the medications.
Yep.
And again, I'm somebody that when I'm in goal, like when I'm set on getting a goal,
Yeah.
you tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
I don't, like I said, my emotions go aside and I focus on this is what I need to do. Well, what I did do actually was I made a vision board.
Oh, wow.
So every time, because we have to give injections, and I did it myself, right?
Yep. No, I showed you how to use the syringes, and you were.
Yeah. So every time I would have to give myself injections, I had that vision board there.
Oh, wow.
And that really helped center me and keep me motivated. Like, okay, this is what we're doing this for. Because under hormonal medication, like it's kind of like going through menopause. You get hot flashes, mood swings. My ovaries would get swollen, and I could feel the pain of the ovaries being swollen, and so it's physically
taxing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that I remember more so just physically the pain of that experience. But emotionally, I think it was our first time, so I was hopeful, and I was like, this is what we need to do, then this is what we got to do.
Yep.
Wow. How long did how many rounds? Because I know for some couples it works on the first round. For some, it might take a little bit longer.
Yeah,
we were really lucky there.
The first time.
First time, which I know is not the case for many couples.
Right.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How did you feel as you're going through this and like the reality of this process working?
Yeah, and I don't want to say this to discourage anyone, but I remember when they harvested the eggs from me, it looked awfully painful to me. The look on your face was painful.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a surgical procedure, you know, they have to go in and extract the eggs. And so, there was a physical pain experience to it. But, you know, it's temporary.
Yeah.
Our bodies heal. And I was fine in the
day. Yeah, you were fine right after we left. Yeah.
It was, you know, so again, and I remember, I think coming home, right? I think, actually after they, so then, you know, they extract the eggs, fertilize them with sperm, and then make embryos. Yeah. My doctor called, said, you got strong embryos, you know, we could put in 1 or we could put in 2. It's up to you.
Well, we didn't even know when we went there how many we were putting in. And it was just like the thing, I remember her saying, oh, we'll put in 2.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And at that time, they don't do it often anymore.
Yeah.
This was 10 years ago. But best practices now is to only put in 1 to achieve a singleton pregnancy because multiples are high risk. So they try to avoid that. But so that at that point, I do remember feeling the most hopeful. Like I remember that I have that memory of driving home after they transferred the embryos.
Yeah. And I remember that was odd because we actually went to the doctor just with the timing and whatnot. It was on a Sunday morning we were there.
Oh.
And it was quiet. There was no one else. This was normally a very busy place.
Right.
And we were the only people in there with the doctor. And I don't know, maybe they had a nurse there too, but that was it. It was like we were the only people there.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, given the timing, I guess, on everything, they had to do that.
Right.
Wow.
But I
almost feel like you were transported back to that memory, John, as you were talking about this just now.
Yep. And then it was just amazing going to the doctor, and when they heard the heartbeat, and then she said, oh, we hear another heartbeat. And Anna looks at me and goes, you're buying me a minivan. So that was the first words out of her mouth.
Did that end up happening?
Yes, it did.
I still,
And it's a Toyota Sienna, and we still own it.
we still have it. That was it. The minivan that picked up our babies from the
Yep.
hospital. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
That is absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Wow, what a journey. I mean, there's so many ups and downs through what every couple goes through. And of course, every couple's story is a little bit different or a lot different depending on what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you think back to again where you are, and I think earlier it might have been one of your kids coming in,
Yeah.
in
Right.
the background, and it's
Sorry.
like, oh, those are welcome interruptions, And so it's just great.
Mhm. Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious about how life currently was afterwards, how it is now, and um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I ended up sharing my story in a book that I
Mhm.
wrote.
Yeah.
And because that was my healing process, was to write it and really put it out there in public.
Mhm.
I remember when I was writing it, I was more afraid of my parents reading it.
Oh,
They
tell me what you were afraid of in regards
didn't
to.
know our journey.
Ah,
They didn't know any of this. And in my book, I talk about sex and
yeah,
intimacy and sperm and eggs and
yeah,
you know stuff that in most Latino families we
Mhm.
don't talk about.
yeah, right.
And they didn't know we were
Mhm.
really going through this journey,
Mhm.
right? It was just a phone call to my dad one day. Oh, we're pregnant. And he's like, oh, great.
Well,
And that was it, kind of.
but it was actually, we were supposed to go to Chicago,
Yeah.
and we were supposed to go visit your parents for, I don't remember exactly what it was. I believe it was some kind of a family
Yeah.
thing. And we got everything packed up, and we were about to go to the airport, and you were suffering for such bad, morning sickness and nausea. You just told me there's no way I can get on an airplane.
Right. Yeah.
So that's when we called your dad up and said we
Mm-hmm.
can't come, and the reason we can't come is because you're not feeling well because you're pregnant, and you're pregnant with twins.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
That they must have been
it
over
was
the
a great
moon.
story. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So, and then, after I wrote my book,
Mm,
I then really, I think that's when I did really open up to talking about it publicly
yeah.
and helping other people who are struggling.
mm,
And so really, I do say infertility never ends. And at the same time, I have learned that infertility is my pain that has become my life's purpose.
mm. Wow. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Because at first it was like I kept it hidden, right? I didn't talk about it, didn't want
Mhm.
to.
There was a lot of shame
Not
there.
shame,
Shame
yeah, right.
associated with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just said, and that kept me in depression and
Mm,
anxiety, right? I was
yeah.
so even though we had the kids and we were parents now, it was still now even a further layer. We had
Mm,
frozen embryos, and are we going to do it again? Are we going to get pregnant again? And even
yeah.
that cognitive energy it takes to have to continue the family plan.
Yeah.
When again, other people can just get pregnant spontaneously,
Mhm.
continued that pain for me.
Yeah.
So, and I think I just came to this place of saying I have to, I can't change that I have infertility. That's a
Mhm.
medical condition. So am I going to stay in depressed mode, or,
Mm,
am I going to shift? And granted, yes, I still get depressed and I still grieve and
mm,
I still have
mm,
sadness, but I just then said I need to shift here,
Mhm.
and make it my purpose. And then
mm.
so yeah, so I don't know how to
Well, was
articulate
there
it further, but
I guess, was it the whole journey? Was there something in particular that felt like I got to shift?
Mhm.
I mean, I think
Well,
I don't know.
I think the thing is, and I'm going back to your pregnancy. Poor Anna spent 8-9 weeks on bed rest in the hospital.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I think one of the things that really kind of highlighted my struggle with her was after the twins were delivered, the doctor came in and told me, when she saw what your uterus was like, she looked at me and she goes, "You two could have tried naturally till the cows came home, but you never would have conceived naturally."
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
So that's when it really hit me. Oh my goodness, I would never be sharing this moment hadn't we sought help.
Yeah. Oh my. Wow.
We
Wow.
would have been.
And I think, we both have very giving hearts.
Yeah.
And when I started learning more about
Mhm.
infertility and realizing, like even you said, when you started sharing it with people, other people started sharing with us. Like we struggle too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so as someone who gives, I wanted to now give to others. And
Yeah.
so by sharing, so now, I mean, I'm anywhere I go, I say I have twins conceived through IVF because I have infertility. And I'm
Yeah.
very open publicly about it because of that stigma and shame that keep people suffering in silence.
Yes.
So-
Yes. There are so many like that. And
Mhm.
just being Asian, I
Mhm.
don't ever hear Asians talking about Asian Americans, even those of us, again,
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
no one ever talks about that,
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
infertility and struggles with pregnancy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I cut you off.
No. I kind of lost track there, but
Yeah.
I think the thing is that, just kind of watching it, now that I kind of replay it in my head,
Mm,
it's like, you always try to think about, well, what could you have done better?
mm,
And, I can honestly say now that, yeah, I wish I was a little bit more on board right from the start. And my
mm,
advice to anyone else is, if you're dealing with this problem, you're not alone, and it's okay to seek help.
Mhm.
mm.
And that's just and then we would have never shared that moment hadn't we had the help.
Right.
And that's when it really dawned on me, especially when the doctor told me that right
Yeah.
after her form.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah. And you both really are, even now coming on here, agreeing to share your story. For anyone that's listening to this, you're helping them.
Mhm.
Because I think everyone, when they go through struggles like this, they are really in isolation. And that it's a shame part too. And
Yeah.
also not knowing who else do we know and where do we go to ask for help or to get support.
Mhm.
And so again, which is why I am so appreciative of both of you coming
Mhm.
on to share.
Mhm.
And to talk a little bit more then, because there's really something, not just the focus of this, right? What came up, even your practice name, right?
Yes.
It's pretty special. Can you talk about
Yes.
that?
So my practice name is Charlandra Counseling Services, and it's named after my twins. So Charles and Alejandra combined to make Charlandra. So it's not only a legacy for them, but really it's their story that created the practice, right? The work that I do and how they were conceived and brought into the world. And so, I really, so even though, I can't get pregnant, we don't have any other children. We decided after the twins that we were a complete family, that I still have, I think maybe 8 babies that have been born through people I've helped.
So yeah, talk about that.
Yes,
Did
we
you
have 8
donate?
babies. Well, we did. Well, okay, so from my counseling practice,
Got
the
it.
support
Okay.
groups we hold and the counseling we provide, I've had about 8 people who've gotten pregnant through different
Oh,
treatments as well.
Yeah.
So to me, they're like my babies
yes.
as well, right? So that helps to kind of just fill my heart because I
Yeah.
love babies.
Yeah.
And then we did end up deciding to donate our unused embryos to others. And,
Wow.
at the time we did it, there was no option for it to be open. So it was an anonymous donation. So we don't know.
We have no
there's
idea. It's in God's hands.
Yeah.
We don't know if any of those
No.
embryos became little babies.
No.
Yeah.
Until maybe one day they knock on our door and say hello.
Yeah.
But
Oh my God.
I think
Yeah.
one thing that Anna's kind of going back, and this has happened quite a few times since
Mhm.
then, you might want to talk about this, is that you kind of wish in some ways that we didn't donate them right away.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother episode,
Yeah.
but
You're both welcome to come on again.
Yeah. Yeah.
embryo donation is a whole nother
Mm.
conversation because I was in a post-traumatic stress situation.
Mm.
And I mean that because going through infertility, struggling to get pregnant, fighting to have a baby, and then having a high-risk pregnancy was very traumatic.
Mhm.
Yes.
And it was a trauma I didn't deal with, right?
Yeah.
I didn't go to a therapist and talk it through. And so when I was in those moments of having to decide, do we keep our embryos another year? Do we donate them? I think I was in that emotional state of like trauma where I couldn't imagine feeling sick again, going through a C-section again, like it, all that, the physical pain, I think is what led me to the decision to donate. But yeah, there were moments when, you know, both of us probably
we waited about I'd say about 3 or 4 years afterwards, at least maybe.
And you're parenting toddlers too at the same time. So
which is,
and then you got the bill, you got the bill you got to pay every year,
Mm.
and it came due. And
but I remember maybe when they were 5 or 6 or so, I was like, wow, like I wish I did have those embryos because I may have tried for a third. And it was too late, you know. So I do, you know, I did have regret because I don't want to live with regret, but I know I had regret for a while. And that's another point of passion, which is, you know, at the time I didn't get any counseling around it. Even if just one session where a professional talked to me about your embryo, they call it embryo disposition decisions, maybe I would have been able to talk through some of this. You know? But that didn't happen at that time. And that has shifted. Now there's a little bit more knowledge about doing that type of counseling to help people decide. So, but you know, it's done. And I'm just, it never really bothered me. I'm just blessed with what we have. That's how I looked at it. Right. And I know that. And that's what he maybe that's a little bit easier to say than, but
yeah.
I think for us in our childbearing years, just that feeling, that urge to get pregnant and have a baby and nurture a baby stayed strong in my soul for a while. You know, well, and I'm only 42. I'm not, I can still, women my age are still getting pregnant. So
yes, absolutely. And you hear again, I mean, what we hear is in the celebrity news, right? Like, I think recently, who was it that just announced her pregnancy, but she certainly is not in her early 20s, right? I mean, or mid 20s, you know, she's in her 50s. And so, yeah, I mean, again, that's certainly possible. But I can see how you are in a nurturing, and both of you really together, but through your practice and what you said about that guidance. If you had just that one therapist or someone to come alongside and maybe help you process through some things, it might have been different, but certainly emotionally when you're going through so much. And I can see how your focus now through your practice, you know, with women and walking them through infertility is just really part of that. And it's special, you know, the more I hear about this from you and understand. Yeah,
it's really.
Yeah, well, I have a few questions here that came in, you know, not during this live, but certainly over the last week or so. I wish I had my reading glasses with me. But so the first one here is, it's been a long emotional season of ups and downs going on 2 years as my husband and I try to begin a family. How did you and your husband remain hopeful? Was there ever a time when you didn't think the marriage would go on?
Yeah,
it took us 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever felt that the marriage was in jeopardy or.
No, and I think any issues we had with the marriage was after, like when the kids were little, there was a little bit of conflict we had, but we got through that. That's the parenting with twins. When they're less than 2 years old and the husband's traveling all the time in Mexico for work, that was a little bit tough, but we got through that too as well. But I guess the one thing that we did discuss too, that was that we did discuss potentially adopting too as well. So that was on the back burner too as well. So it's at some point we were going to figure out a way to become parents. If we couldn't figure out a way to have a baby through some sort of conception, we were going to look to adopt at some point. So maybe that was kind of like the backstop thing. Even though that you know, was a difficult process the way things are now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I will say I've spoken with one colleague of mine. He's Latino, and he has infertility, and he and his wife, he actually, was I heard, the first time I had heard it from the male perspective, that he loved his wife so much that he would give her a divorce so she could find and get her pregnant.
Yeah.
I thought that was really powerful, but and luckily, I mean, they were able to conceive. Thank God. But yeah, I don't. I mean, I guess the hopefulness was that we would find a way to become parents at some point.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And I think there was more hope between the two of us once we found the doctor too, as well.
Right. Yeah.
Which speaks to, again, how important that support is, and having someone who's really going to be there and come alongside to help out. And Anna, you mentioned some, in terms of the male infertility. I hope, to have a guest on at some point to talk about that from his perspective, because I know that there are males who go through that also. But again, it's rare. It's a rare conversation, and not many people talk about it.
Right. It's a rare conversation, but male infertility is also like 30%, just the same as female infertility. So statistically, even though, the women is like the identified patient, right? The one that is the one that can't get pregnant. It's equally sometimes a male factor for why they can't get pregnant.
Yeah. So we need to somehow increase the level of awareness and support and resources. Right?
I know. Yeah. And I will send you some over, Michelle, some resources for men.
Great.
Because I have a colleague who he is also another male with infertility and becoming a social worker. And his passion too is reaching men. So he has a podcast, and he's really linked with the male resources. So
and we'll put them into the show notes.
Yep.
So that'll be great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Second question here. And you talked a little bit about this, John, but can you, and I guess it would be a question that's more towards you, is can you give some suggestions on how we can best be there for our wives? As the husband writing in, what resources are there for men?
Well, I think the first thing the man needs to do is, make sure you go to the doctor appointments with your wife, because some of those initial appointments, I don't even think I went, which was bad. So if I was going to do it over again, I would have gone to all your doctor's appointments, because getting pregnant is it's a couple's problem. It's not a woman's problem. It's a couple's problem. So the couple needs to go, even even if they're looking more at you at that stage in the whole game.
Right.
In terms of resources, I'm sure there's a lot online. But I didn't really. I just listened to Anna at that point, and the doctors.
I loved how you talked about this as being in a car ride.
Well, yeah, and in many ways, men kind of think they know where they're going in a car. They don't like to take directions from people, and they wind up driving like 30 miles out of their way. Where sometimes. Sometimes you need to look at a map or turn on the GPS and look at the best rate. So that's where the research and the knowledge comes in.
But you also said how like doing fertility treatments is just a detour.
Yes.
That car ride, but you're reaching the same goal.
Yes, you're right.
At the end, you're going to
get the baby.
Yeah.
So it's a longer route to go than you would have typically imagined or had hoped for, but you get the treatment, you're eventually going to get to your destination, which is have that child.
So I like that analogy, because men want to feel, in control.
They want to feel in control.
Yeah.
Look, I know
they're doing something and helping out too.
But I might have to take that detour.
Yeah.
So thank you for refreshing my memory there.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Now,
Mhm.
I have one more question for you, and then we'll end with maybe some words of encouragement or some words of impartation for
Mhm.
couples that you have. But this last question here is again, it says, we love our couple friends, but each time one of our couple friends announce the news of their pregnancy, it's hard for us to celebrate with them. And we feel guilty for not being able to share in their joy as we go through the pain of our infertility. We also have a hard time at baby showers and recently decided not to go. We don't want to lose our friendships and want to show up for them, but truth be told, it's really painful. Don't even know what to ask, but can you speak from your experience of how you might have managed something like this?
Mm. No, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Because I even remember one time I knew somebody at work who was pregnant, and Anna came to pick me up or something, and I had to walk Anna the other way just so she didn't see this person who got married actually like within a week is what
Mhm.
when we got married, because I didn't
Mhm.
want Anna to be depressed the entire ride home.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, some of these couples that you're going to the the showers, they might have had
Mm.
struggles
Mm.
getting pregnant too as well. So it may be an opportunity just to say that, look, this is something that we're trying to achieve too as well,
Mm.
and maybe it could, the conversation could turn into a motivation factor, or maybe you could even find the doctor, like we found the doctor from our friend who had gotten pregnant,
Yeah. So,
and that's what led us to our doctor, was talking to somebody.
right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna. Yeah, that's kind of what I would
Mm.
give.
Mm.
The um the advice I would give is, even though you don't want to be there and don't want to talk to him and it's
Mhm.
painful, to also have that conversation at some point. So whether
Mm.
you decide to not go, or if you do
Mhm.
go,
Yeah.
to talk with that couple and say, we are struggling to get pregnant, and
Mm.
we are happy for you that you're pregnant, and
Yeah.
at the same time we're sad because we're not pregnant yet.
Mm. Mhm.
So I think just having that conversation will help
Yeah.
get through that moment, because the pain is valid and it's going
Yeah.
to be there.
Yeah.
And I think to maintain those relationships needs
Yeah.
that communication, right? So your
Yeah.
friend doesn't feel like
Mm.
in the dark with, well, why didn't my friend show up?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's more like, in the right time you can share why you didn't show up and why you
Mm.
made that decision, and hopefully
Mm.
they can honor and respect that, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
maintain that
Mhm.
friendship.
Yeah, and it sounds like from this question, that these are relationships that they want to keep, and so to me, that says perhaps they are people that are close enough that they can
Mhm.
have some of these. It's a hard conversation to have, but
Yeah.
something that would be worth having.
Mhm.
Oh,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, with that, before you give your, I guess, closing, impartation or words of encouragement, the other thought and question I had in regards to friends and even family. So let's say you do have a conversation, or, family, friends, close, or even those who just happen to hear, oh, you're having, you're some struggles and you're going through infertility, and what are some things that are encouraging, some things that are not encouraging? I mean, people
Mm.
sometimes say things that they
Mhm.
they want to be encouraging, but it's almost like, oh, I wish you had just actually not said anything.
Right. Right.
Anything that comes to mind that's like, okay, please don't say this,
Yes.
or this would be helpful instead.
Mhm. Yeah, don't say just relax.
It'll
It'll
happen.
happen.
Mhm.
When God wills it,
Mm.
trust in God, have
Mm.
faith. Yes, those
Yeah,
are
those
yes,
are all
those are
good
they're
things.
good
Those are all
things.
good things, but
Right.
at some point you need to seek some help too as well.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah.
this comes up all the time. I call those reproductive microaggressions.
Oh, yeah.
That was
That's a good phrase.
yes.
Yeah.
And so what is helpful to say, just like if there was somebody who experienced a loss,
Mm.
is to say, I'm here for you.
Mhm.
Mm.
What can I do?
Mhm.
How can I learn more?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, and not even saying I'm sorry either, because
Yeah.
pity is not needed. And how do you apologize for something that isn't your fault?
Mhm.
Like it's just one of those conversation fillers, I think,
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
situation. But
Yeah.
more so like give that pause, say I'm here for you. And I think that's the biggest thing, because we just want comfort, we want support.
Yes.
And if that means, can I call you and cry after I'm not pregnant again, then that's what's needed. Then that is what's helpful to say, like those types of comments, to let them know that you're there for them when they need you.
Yeah. That's great. That's really good. Yeah, it really goes back to that coming alongside, right? And even if you don't know what to say, I imagine to say like that must be really hard. I
Right.
I
There
don't
you
know
go.
what
Yeah,
to
that's
say.
a good one.
Right?
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
very good one.
Yeah. Well, what words of wisdom after going through your experience or encouragement or just something that, for couples who are listening to this, or again, even friends or family members who know of loved ones who are going through this, what would you say?
Well, I think Guy's point of view is, don't be like me, get on board right away. Don't just be passive about it, oh, that'll happen. No, get on board. And like Anna had reminded me before, it's just a detour. The whole process is just a detour. Yeah, it's a little bit harder, but you're gonna be able to get that child. And once you have that child, like now, I couldn't imagine life without our two children now. So it's it's beyond anything I ever imagined, and it's hard to imagine life now, how life was without them now. So and you want to get there, and there's things there's a detour process you have to go through. And so the quicker you take that detour, the sooner you're going to get to where you want to be.
Thank you, John. Anna?
I think for women, you are not less of a woman because you can't get pregnant. And I felt that, right? I felt that at one point, and now I don't so much. But I think that's really helpful for women to hear that you are worthy and you are you're not defective, and you are still a woman, and there are and to embrace that, and also seek help, seek support. And also, I guess I'll leave this too. We kind of talked about intimacy going down. We have regained our intimacy, it has gone up. So there is that.
There's hope in that too.
There's hope in that too.
It's no longer a chore,
That's great.
It's fun again. Exactly.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So that season of just all the difficulties and stuff, I mean, it becomes restored again.
Yes.
And, there's hope here.
Yes.
Well, John and Anna, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story, your encouragement, your wisdom. There's just so much here. And I feel like we can go on for for a long time. And I mean, definitely want to, if you're open, invite you back to come and share other aspects to your story. But thank you again so much.
Thank
sure.
you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we hope that our story will help somebody else.
Thank you. Anna, if and I don't know, John, if you're on social media, if you want to offer this, but Anna, I certainly know that you are. How can people find you, reach out to you?
Sure. So my website is www.charlandra.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn under Dr. Anna Flores-Locke. So and if you just Google Charlandra counseling, you'll find me all over.
And how do you spell that?
CharLandra.
Great. Awesome. Just want to make sure it'll all be available in the show notes, both on Facebook and on YouTube.
Thank you.
But yeah.
We're here for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining today. And if you're again live or catching the replay later, I hope that this was a really wonderful just time of encouragement for you. I do want to invite you to our next Re-envision Live, which is November 20th at 4 p.m. I've invited another colleague of mine, and her name is Lanika Bembo Brunton, and she will talk about what it was like for her going through a marriage. She is a domestic violence survivor, and so she's going to talk about life without limits. And so there's so many amazing things that she's going to do. So save Sunday, November 20th, 4 p.m. Again, I'll probably be competing with football again. I will just have to deal with that. But I hope you catch this again live or on the replay. And thank you again, everyone, so much for joining. Again, you can find Re-envision Life Talks through Re-envision MFT on Facebook or YouTube at Re-envision Life Talks. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and take care. Bye.